It starts with silence. Then the fog rolls in. People vanish. Time distorts. And when the mist clears, they're either gone or something else came back. These aren't legends. These are real stories. And after hearing them, you'll never trust a foggy night again. It rolled in slow. That's what got to Marcus first. The fog wasn't like the kind you see on early mornings over a lake, or the sort that snakes between alleyways in old noir films. No, this was thicker, more invasive. It poured down the valley's throat like pale molasses, absorbing the town of Elmbrook one dimly lit street at a time. It was the morning of October 4th when Marcus noticed it from his window. He was sipping reheated coffee, still in his boxers, one sock on and the other lost somewhere under his bed. Outside, the fog reached just past the playground near the woods, swallowing half the slide. It didn't seem normal, not just because of its density but its behavior. It didn't rise or dissipate, crept forward, like it had somewhere to be. Marcus lived at the edge of town, where the roads began to bleed into forest. His house stood alone with a view that gave him both a blessing and a curse, a front-row seat to what others might miss. By the time he was dressed and halfway through his toast, the fog had already reached his driveway. There were no birds, no squirrels scampering along the power lines, just silence and the sound of the refrigerator motor humming like a warning. He stepped outside and felt the air press against him like wet wool. Every breath carried the faint smell of earth after rain. But under that, something sour, like meat just beginning to turn. By 10 a.m., the town was blanketed. School had been canceled. The local Facebook group buzzed with grainy phone camera photos and worried captions. Weird fog near Birch Street? Never seen anything this thick before? And can't see my own mailbox? The Elmbrook PD issued a statement by noon asking residents to stay indoors. Visibility was low. Some reported minor vehicle accidents at intersections where the stoplights seemed to glow but not actually illuminate. Marcus was a freelance writer, and deadlines don't stop for weather. But even he couldn't concentrate. His phone kept vibrating with alerts and news bulletins, most of them as baffled as he was. Still, he tried to get back to work, tuning it all out with headphones and white noise. That worked until the knocking started. It was faint. 3 soft raps against the glass of his back sliding door. He removed one headphone and waited. Another knock. Still faint. Still rhythmic. Not urgent. Just persistent. He got up and looked. Nothing but the fog. It pressed up against the glass like someone had exhaled across it. He opened the door a crack. No one there. No footprints. Just that unnatural quiet. By nightfall, the entire town was under curfew. Local authorities still couldn't explain the sudden shift in climate. Power lines began to fail. Not all at once. Just here and there, like the fog was swallowing the grid inch by inch. That's when the dreams began. First, Marcus thought it was just stress. But every night, the same dream would arrive. Him walking through his hallway in the dark, following a trail of muddy footprints that were somehow inside his home, always leading to the closet under the stairs, always ending in silence, always with the feeling that whatever made them had only just slipped inside. 3 nights in a row. By the 4th morning, something changed. Marcus woke to find his shoes wet, just the soles, as if he'd walked through damp grass. But his doormat was dry, and he hadn't left the house. His neighbor Sandra called that afternoon, said her cat was missing. Not unusual, cats wander. But then the Thompsons said their dog was gone too. Then Greg from across the street mentioned he hadn't seen his chickens for a day and a half. They all blamed the fog, or coyotes. By now, the fog had begun to develop texture. It wasn't uniform anymore. Parts of it seemed darker, thicker, like strands of gauze floating within gauze. People reported shadows moving inside it. Not quick darting things. Just slow, deliberate movements. Large. Too large. That night, Marcus did something stupid. He set up a camera. Not for security. Just curiosity. He placed his phone in the upstairs window overlooking the backyard, set to record time-lapse overnight. He fell asleep around 1 a.m., comforted by the glow of his desk lamp. The next morning, the fog was still there. A little lighter, a little thinner, like it was retreating. But when he checked the footage, his breath caught. For most of the night, the screen showed only darkness punctuated by fog dancing in moonlight. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., something emerged. At first just a shift in density, a swelling of the mist. Then legs. Wrong. They bent backwards at the knee. A shape glided silently across his lawn, pausing at his bird feeder. It had arms. Too many, or not enough. It was hard to tell. The thing stood for nearly 2 full minutes, then slowly turned toward the camera, as if it knew. No face, no eyes, but it knew. Marcus deleted the video. He didn't even watch the rest. He just deleted it. Not out of panic, but instinct. Something deep and ancestral told him that keeping that footage meant giving it permission. He barely ate that day. Couldn't focus on anything. By now, the local police had started doing patrols in pairs. A sheriff's deputy told Sandra that dispatch kept getting reports of people seeing things that weren't there, or hearing voices, whispers that sounded like loved ones calling from outside. No confirmations, just static. On the 6th night, Marcus lost power. The fog was thinner, yes, but the darkness was worse. It clung to the windows now. He sat on the couch with a flashlight, flipping through a magazine he couldn't comprehend, just waiting. Then the tapping returned. Not on the glass this time, on wood. The hollow knock of something striking his porch railing. Then again. He moved to the window and shined his light. Nothing, just fog and frost. He stepped out, barefoot, onto the porch. The air was cold and strangely dry, despite the mist. His breath rose in short bursts. He scanned the yard. Still nothing. Then he looked down. Wet prints. Barefoot. Human-shaped, but larger. Each toe elongated like it had been stretched. They started at his railing and led up the porch steps to his door. But not away. They didn't leave. He spun around, heart racing. The door was open. Just a crack. He was sure he had closed it. Inside, the air was different. The lights flickered. His flashlight dimmed momentarily, though the batteries were new. He called out. No response. He stood in his hallway. Slowly, mechanically, he turned toward the stairs. There were prints. Muddy. Leading up. Not fresh. Faint, like someone had wiped their feet but still tracked in moisture. They weren't there before. His hand moved to the banister. His heart thundered. He climbed. Each step creaked louder than the last. Upstairs, the hallway stretched out like a tunnel. Fog. Inside. Swirled faintly near the ceiling, like breath in a freezer. The prints led to the guest room. The door was slightly ajar. From within, silence. Heavy, dense silence. The kind you hear when you're underwater or dreaming. He nudged it open. Nothing. Just still air and the faint scent of rot. But the window was open. That's when he knew. It hadn't come in. It had left. And whatever it was, it had been watching him sleep. The window pane was cold to the touch. Marcus leaned into it carefully, peering out into the haze beyond the frame. Though the fog had thinned earlier that day, it had returned now with fresh intensity. It crawled across the trees like oil, clinging to bark and pine needles, swallowing even the closest fence posts. He scanned the yard from the second-story vantage. Nothing moved, but the stillness was oppressive, too perfect. Not a leaf twitched, not a branch bent. The world outside seemed paused. His breath had fogged the glass. He wiped it with his sleeve and flinched. For a split second, a shadow stood at the edge of the woods. Tall, thin, bent slightly at the middle like it was leaning forward to listen. But when he blinked, it was gone. That was the last time he slept in the guest room. By noon the following day, town officials declared a state of preliminary environmental emergency. That didn't mean much, just that nobody had answers and everybody had questions. Theories ran wild. Chemical leak, undiscovered microclimate phenomenon, volcanic venting from underground. None stuck. There was no sulfur smell, no elevated radiation, just fog. Endless, growing, moving fog. And the disappearances. 3 more people had gone missing. Sheriff Hadley confirmed it on a community livestream. His pale face dimly lit in a room clearly operating on backup power. "The McCaskey girl hasn't come home," he said, rubbing his temples. "We also have no contact from Dale Kramer or Mrs. Pearson. This is now a matter of public safety. Everyone is ordered to remain indoors. Lock your doors. Do not answer your door unless you are expecting someone you know. If you see or hear anything unusual, contact our emergency line immediately." Comments flooded the stream. "WTF is happening? What do you mean gone? I saw something near the woods too. And I heard Dale screaming last night." The scream. Marcus remembered it. Faint but real. The night before, he'd written it off as a fox or raccoon fight. Something animal. Now it was impossible to ignore. Something was out there. And it was getting bolder. The fog began to enter homes. Not through doors or windows, through the cracks. Under baseboards. Through attic vents. Even sealed garages showed signs of it. Carpets near vents grew damp. White mist pooled beneath heaters. People started duct taping everything. Sandra from next door called again. This time she sounded off. Her voice was flat, measured. Every sentence came with an unnatural pause. "There's someone in my hallway." Marcus froze. "Did you call the police?" "I tried. But they don't answer now." He swallowed. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, stay where you are. Just wanted someone to know." Then she hung up. He stared at his phone for 5 minutes before deciding. He grabbed his flashlight and kitchen knife and opened the front door. The fog pressed against him immediately. It had weight now. Not metaphorical. Real. It pushed against his skin like fingers. His ears popped, and the world muffled like he'd submerged underwater. Sandra's porch light was on. The glow pulsed strangely through the haze, almost vibrating. He knocked once, twice, called her name. Nothing. Then a shadow moved past the blinds. But not Sandra. It was too tall, too thin. Its head brushed the top of the window. It glided, slow and smooth, like it didn't walk. It floated. Marcus stepped back. He wasn't prepared for this. Nobody could be. He ran home. That night the dreams changed. No longer footprints. Now he saw the fog inside his own body. In his lungs, his veins. He watched it pulse with his heartbeat. His skin turned translucent and he could see the tendrils weaving through his tissue like roots. He heard whispers too, not external. Internal. Like his thoughts were being echoed by something deeper. When he woke, the window was open again. He nailed it shut. On the 9th day, the fog reached the center of town. Streetlights failed entirely. Cell reception died for good. Even emergency broadcasts ceased. The internet slowed, then stopped. The town was cut off. Survival instincts kicked in. Marcus rationed his food. Stacked furniture in front of his doors. Nailed shut every window, vent, and crawl space he could find. He blacked out the basement windows with trash bags and duct tape. But it didn't matter. The fog seeped through. On the 11th day, he found something in his kitchen. Something that shouldn't be there. A handprint. On the inside of the window. Long, thin. With more joints than any human should have. And something worse. Beneath it. A single word scratched into the condensation. Remember. Remember what? He hadn't forgotten anything. Had he? No. That was nonsense. A trick. Something wanted him to question himself. To doubt what was real. But he did remember something. Vaguely. A story his grandmother once told. About a village. Swallowed by fog. He brushed it off as a child. Just a creepy folktale. She had called them whisper walkers. Spirits that moved with the mist. Feeding not just on bodies but on memories. Places where they lingered became voids in time. Erased. Was that what was happening? He began to journal. He needed an anchor. Names, places, events. Every detail he could remember about Elmbrook, about himself. If they came for his mind, he would fight to preserve it. On day 13, a knock came at 2:00 a.m. 3 soft taps. Then silence. Then again. Knock. 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 He remained frozen. His phone was useless now. No contact. No power. No help. He waited, heart in his throat. Then a voice. Marcus. It was Sandra's voice. Please let me in. I'm so cold. But something was wrong. She wasn't sobbing. Not scared. Her voice was empty. Hollow. Like someone reading from a script. Please, Marcus. I can't feel my fingers. He stayed silent. Then another knock. Firmer. Let me in, Marcus. Then again. Louder. Let me in. The voice warped. Twisted. It was still Sandra's cadence, but there were two tones now. A second voice beneath hers. Deeper. More guttural. Let me in. Silence. Then laughter. Hi. Then. Wrong. He didn't sleep. By dawn, there were no footprints. No sign of anyone outside. But the door frame had claw marks. Deep, narrow. Like fingernails made of bone. The next day, Marcus found a letter. Not mailed. Slid under his door. It was handwritten in neat cursive on old parchment paper. Smelled of cedar and mold. You're not forgotten. We are the air between memory and silence. We are the truth beneath the erasure. We do not hunt. We collect. And your mind is exquisite. Thank you for inviting us in. No signature. He burned it in the fireplace and watched the smoke mix with the fog creeping down the chimney. Something laughed again. The walls began to bleed moisture. Not water, fog. Came through the drywall like steam. His home was being digested. The final straw came on day 15. He awoke to find his reflection missing. Not metaphorically. He stood before the mirror and saw only fog. A silhouette of himself within it. But not him. It moved differently. Blinked when he didn't. Smiled when he didn't. Then it pressed its hand against the inside of the mirror. And whispered, "Come see what we've done to your town." And for the first time in 2 weeks, Marcus left his house willingly. He stepped into the fog barefoot, unarmed. The world outside was silent. He walked to the center of Elmbrook, or where it had been, because now there was nothing. No buildings, no roads, no sidewalks, just fields of pale grass and drifting mist. No signs the town ever existed. And above him, in the sky, the clouds swirled into an opening. A single vast, lidless. I stared down, pupil writhing like smoke. Marcus fell to his knees, and remembered nothing at all. Marcus didn't remember standing, didn't remember walking, but he was moving, barefoot through the tall grass, each blade tipped with dew that shimmered with an oily iridescence. The fog was no longer just around him, it was part of him, clinging to his pores, nestling into the corners of his eyes, sliding down his throat with every breath. He no longer smelled the sourness or rot. The fog now had no scent at all. He walked toward nothing, and still the nothing shifted. Shapes bloomed in the distance, but never resolved. Trees with too many branches. Silhouettes of homes that disappeared when approached. Light posts that bent toward him like listening stalks. The air pulsed gently, as if the atmosphere itself was breathing. He should have panicked. But the fear had gone numb, dulled beneath layers of psychic cotton. He felt like a man who had screamed for so long that his throat had calloused shut. Then something new happened. Voices. Real ones. Not the echoes. Not the dreams. But sharp, terrified shouts. Human. Alive. He stumbled forward, following the sound. Through the thickest part of the fog he found a clearing. And in that clearing a shape. A shelter. Metal, rusted, half buried in the earth. Like a shipping container melted into the soil. The door hung open, light spilling out. A warm amber glow that should have felt comforting. Didn't. Inside, people. 4 of them huddled in a corner. 1 man, 2 women, and a child. All pale, eyes sunken, but alive. They turned as he entered, startled. "Close it!" 1 woman snapped, her voice cracking. "Close it now!" Marcus obeyed. The door slammed shut with a heavy metallic thud. The light dimmed slightly, buzzing from an overhead fixture that looked like it had been rigged from an old RV battery. The air inside was dry and smelled of old metal and stale water. They stared at him. He stared back. Then one of them, the older man, spoke. "You're not one of them." Marcus shook his head slowly. "One of what?" The man didn't answer. Instead, the child, a girl, maybe 8 or 9, stood up. "They wear faces," she said plainly. "But they're not people." Her voice was hollow. The woman beside her put a hand on her shoulder. She saw them take her brother. Marcus sank to the floor, bones aching. "What is this place?" The older woman answered. "It used to be a storage unit for the power company. Someone repurposed it. We found it 3 days ago." "How long have you been out here?" "Since the fog came." Marcus furrowed his brow. "That was over 2 weeks ago." "No," the older man said quietly. "It's been longer." He pointed to the wall. Etched into the metal were tally marks. Hundreds of them. "You've been here for months," Marcus said, stunned. The woman looked away. "Time doesn't work right in the fog." The girl tilted her head. "Sometimes it skips. Sometimes it repeats." Marcus felt sick. "Have any of you tried to leave?" The older man laughed bitterly. "Leave? And go where? Everything's gone. The town's gone. If you walk too far, you start forgetting why you're walking. Then you forget your name. Eventually you forget to breathe." He looked down. Saw it happen to someone. He just stopped existing. The girl whispered. "They took his shadow first." Marcus said nothing. They shared food. Crackers. Canned pears. Warm water from an old thermos. That night he didn't sleep. The others did, in shifts. One always kept watch near the tiny slitted window in the door. Fog pressed against it like frostbite, but never entered. Until the whispering began. It started faint, barely audible. A wind that spoke in broken syllables. Then louder, more urgent. Marcus woke the others. "Shoo!" the woman whispered. "Don't respond. Don't even think about answering." The voice grew stronger. "Ruth," it said. The older woman flinched. "Ruth, it's Sam. It's me." Her hands shook. "That's my husband's voice," she whispered. "He's dead," the old man snapped. But Ruth stood. "No," she hissed. "He was alive. He went to find help. Maybe." She reached for the door. The old man lunged. "Don't." Too late. The door cracked open a sliver. Fog slithered in like fingers through a keyhole. Cold, oily air rushed the room. And behind it something vast. The shelter howled with pressure. Metal groaned. Lights flickered. Ruth screamed. A shape surged through the gap. Tall, serpentine, limbs stretching like wire pulled through tar. It reached for her, dozens of fingers unfurling like insect legs. Marcus grabbed a metal pole from the supply shelf and swung. It passed through the creature like smoke, but it paused. It hesitated. Then it laughed. Not a human sound. Like a phonograph playing madness. The door slammed shut. The child had hit the emergency lever. The fog outside screamed like 1,000 voices at once, distorted and bleeding together. Then silence. Ruth was gone. Only a scorched smear where she'd stood. The man, Don, he finally said his name was, sat down, crying without tears. She opened the door. That's all it takes. A crack. The girl, Eva, crawled into Marcus's lap. She whispered, "It wears her now, but it's too tall." Marcus blinked. "What?" "They don't know how tall we are. When they wear us, they guess. But they always guess wrong." He shivered. Later, when the power faded, they sat in darkness. Listening. Waiting. Then the fog sang. Not with words. With music. Soft. Lilting. A tune Marcus hadn't heard since childhood. A lullaby his mother used to hum while brushing his hair. He almost opened the door. Almost. But Eva grabbed his arm, tight as a vice. "It's not your mother." The next day they voted. Stay or leave. Don wanted to remain. "It's safe here." But Eva disagreed. "It's not safe. It's just slow." They asked Marcus. He hesitated, then nodded. "We go." They prepared, packed, rested. At first light, or what passed for it in the gray, Marcus opened the door. The fog greeted them like a curtain pulled back from a stage. They walked. No plan. Just away. Shapes moved around them. Never close. Always watching. Trees bent as if listening. Eva began to hum. The same lullaby from the night before. Marcus stopped. "Where did you learn that?" She shrugged. "It's always been there." "Did your mom teach you?" "I don't remember my mom." She looked up. "Did yours have red eyes?" Marcus went cold. "No." Then it wasn't her. They kept moving. Don faded first. Not literally. Mentally. He began forgetting words. Stopping mid-sentence. Then names. Then his own. Eventually he sat down. "I'm just gonna rest." They begged. He smiled. "I think I used to know you." Then his skin flaked like ash. And the wind carried him away. Marcus and Eva didn't speak. They walked for hours. Days. Or minutes. Time meant nothing. Then they saw it. A church. Wooden. Crumbling. But real. They entered. Inside, pews coated in dust. Stained glass melted by heat. An altar cracked in two. And behind the pulpit, something glowing. A door. Not physical. A doorway of light. Flickering. Beckoning. Eva trembled. "It's where they can't go." Marcus approached. The fog recoiled. Screamed. But did not enter. He looked back at Eva. She smiled. "You first." He stepped through. Pain. Light. Cold. Warmth. Every memory at once. Then nothing. Then he woke. In a hospital bed. White walls. Beeping monitors. A nurse screaming for a doctor. He gasped. Lungs burning. Where am I?" "Sir, you've been missing for 3 years." 3 years. They said he was found alone in a field near the Elmbrook Basin. No town. No buildings. Just him. Malnourished. Catatonic. They never found Eva. But he remembered. He remembered everything. And some nights, when the fog rolls in, he hears a knock. 3 times. Then a child's voice. "Let me in. I remembered your song." They never found Elmbrook again. Authorities searched. Helicopters swept the valley. Geological surveys showed only forest and rock and traces of long-extinct settlements. Nothing modern. No utility lines. No road maps led there anymore. It was as if the town had been carved out of reality and the scar stitched shut. But Marcus remembered. He remembered it vividly. The layout of the gas station on Maple Street. The smell of bread from the bakery 2 blocks over. He remembered the sound of his boots on the steps of City Hall, and the fire hydrant with a dent shaped like a boot at the corner of Crescent and Elm. No one else remembered Elmbrook. Not the census. Not the government. Not his family. "It must be some kind of fugue," the psychologist explained, flipping through Marcus's charts. 3 years is a long time to fabricate a delusion, but the mind is remarkable. Trauma manifests in unusual ways. Marcus had tried to correct her, tried to show her the letters, the tally marks he'd carved into his own forearm to keep count of the days, the scar where the fog had touched his chest. But they meant nothing to them. He was placed in a supervised outpatient recovery program. A halfway house just outside Harrisburg. That's where he met Hal. Hal was quiet, older, maybe mid-60s. He shuffled more than walked and always kept his sleeves buttoned at the wrist. But one evening, during a group therapy session, Hal said something that changed everything. "It's always fog," Hal muttered after someone else shared a story about a suicide attempt. "They always come in the fog." Marcus looked up, cold creeping into his spine. "What did you say?" Hal glanced at him, eyes wary. Nothing. No. Say it again. Hal's jaw twitched. He shifted in his seat. You've seen them too. It wasn't a question. They waited until lights out to talk again. In hushed voices, under the squeak of old bed frames and distant snoring. Hal had been 17. Lived in a little fishing town called Grenton, up in the hills near Lake Wallenpaupack. One morning, the fog came in thick over the water. That night, people started disappearing. First a dog, then a boy, then a fisherman's wife. No one believed me, Hal said, staring out the window. I saw them in the trees. Tall things, bending backward at the knees. Marcus's breath hitched. Hal nodded slowly. Yeah, you've seen them too. The more they talked, the more the stories overlapped. Marcus shared the church, the glowing doorway, the disappearance of Eva. Hal described an old boathouse, buried in weeds and fog, where his brother vanished after chasing a voice that sounded like their mother. They both remembered the silence, the cold, the stillness that wasn't still at all. They feed on places, Hal said, and then they take the people. Or maybe the other way around. What are they? Marcus asked. I don't think they're from here. Aliens? No, Hal shook his head. Something older. They come with the fog? No, Hal said softly. The fog comes with them. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the mirror. The version of himself that blinked wrong. That moved too slowly. That stood in fog instead of glass. 3 days later, Hal was gone. Vanished. Left all his things. Wallet, shoes, even dentures. His bed was made. Only clue. A small smudge of soot on the windowsill. And carved into the inside of the glass. A fingerprint. Long, thin. With too many joints. No one else believed Marcus. Again. He started journaling again. Logging everything. And then something new happened. Mail. A small envelope. Postmarked from a town he didn't recognize. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. Of him. And Eva. Standing in front of the burned-out church. He turned the photo over. One word in child's handwriting. Soon. He filed a missing person report. Again. The authorities humored him. Again. But there was no Eva Jenkins in any database. No child matching that name missing. No one remembered a girl by that description anywhere. He began looking deeper. Old newspapers, microfilm, obituaries, census records, libraries, ghost towns, flooded valleys. He searched for towns that disappeared without explanation. Sometimes it was a mining collapse. Other times a toxic spill. Often just unexplained vanishings. And one thing showed up again and again: fog. Heavy fog before disappearance. Always reported the day before. He mapped them. Elmbrook, Grenton, Hillstown, Dunrick Hollow, Murrow's Edge. 6 towns in the last 80 years. And then his blood went cold. Because he found another marked with a red asterisk on a 1972 geological survey. Willett Point, scheduled for dam expansion. Town evacuated. But the final census still listed 432 residents unaccounted for. Date of disappearance? Next week. But the dam was never built. The records ended abruptly. Only a single photograph remained. An aerial view showing white fog bleeding over the tree line. Marcus had to go. He rented a car. Told his counselor it was a family emergency. Bought a flashlight, iodine tablets, MREs. Brought a backup charger, compass, and maps older than the internet. The drive was 7 hours. He arrived late at night. The road ended at a rusted sign. Willett Point Pop 742. It was covered in moss. A raven sat perched atop it, silent. Fog kissed the edges of the road, but not fully arrived. He parked, took a breath. Then the voice came. Behind him. Hello, Marcus. He spun. A woman stood in the middle of the road. Pale dress, black hair, eyes like smudged charcoal. It was Eva, but older. Maybe 16 now, or older still. Her face didn't match the age in her eyes. "Eva," she smiled. "You remembered. How are you here? This is where it began." "What is?" "The forgetting." She pointed at the fog. "They come tonight." Marcus stepped closer. "I've been looking for you." "I know. I saw the photo. I sent it." "Why?" She stepped into the light, and for the first time he saw her shadow, twisted the wrong way, like it didn't match her limbs. "Because you're one of us now." His heart stopped. "What?" "You stepped through the door. The place where they can't go. That's how they mark you." "Mark me?" "You're a lantern," she whispered. "You shine, and they see you." The fog rolled in faster now. From all sides, trees vanished. Crickets stopped chirping. "What happens now?" he asked. She reached forward and touched his forehead. And everything went white. Light swallowed him. Not heat, not fire, just endless white, humming like silence stretched too far. Marcus floated not upward or downward, but sideways, diagonally, through a dimension that ignored direction. The world twisted, bent, straightened, and bent again. For a moment, he wasn't sure he even had a body. He could no longer feel fingers, limbs, breath. Just motion, memory, a rushing current of moments that weren't quite his. He saw a boy looking for his dog in a cornfield, swallowed by mist before he turned back. He saw a young couple parked on Lover's Hill, their laughter slowly replaced by confusion, then dread, then screams. He saw a church, burning from within, though no fire touched its walls. He saw a version of himself, older maybe or just wrong, standing in a room full of mirrors, each one reflecting a slightly different face. Some smiled, others cried. One bled from the eyes. Then the light cracked, and Marcus fell. Not hard, like slipping into bed after a sleepless night. The world reassembled around him slowly. Trees formed first, tall and skeletal. Then ground. Then sky. He stood in a forest. The air was cold. Not misty, not damp, dry. The way air feels after snow but before sun. There was no fog here. Only silence. He turned, and Eva was beside him. Her face was calm now. Not childlike, not aged. Just still. "What is this place?" he asked. "A filter." She walked ahead and he followed. No footprints formed beneath their feet. The trees bent away from her, gently. "They come from somewhere else," she said. "Not a planet. Not even a dimension. A layer beneath meaning. They feed on the residue of memory. Towns, people, places not written in stone." "But why fog?" "Because fog forgets." He frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to. It just is." She stopped near a clearing where the fog roiled above the surface like steam on glass. "We're in the place between, where they can't touch us. But only for a while." Marcus stared into the fog. "So this is it? I live here now." "No. You still belong there. They haven't eaten you yet." "How do I stop them?" "You don't," she said softly. "But you can remember." She placed a hand on his chest. "Write it down. Draw it. Carve it into stone. Tattoo it on your skin. Keep Elmbrook alive. Because when the last person forgets, it ends." "What ends?" "Everything it ever touched." He looked at her. "Are you even real?" She smiled faintly. "Real enough. For now." Then the trees shook. The air changed. She stiffened. "They found the scent." "The scent of what you remember." And then she was gone. Just gone. No wind. No fade. Just empty space where she stood. The fog closed in. This fog was different. Not the kind that clung, it bit. Cold, sharp. It hissed against his skin. He ran. Through trees that bent to trap him. Over roots that twisted like fingers. The sky darkened in chunks, like pieces of heaven being peeled away. Something chased him. Not footsteps. Not pause. Just the suggestion of pursuit. A pressure behind his thoughts. A second rhythm in his breath. A deeper heartbeat beneath his own. He reached the edge of the clearing and saw a mirror, standing, unsupported, in the middle of a ring of stones. His reflection didn't move, but it stared back. He stepped forward. His reflection opened its mouth. No sound, just fog. Marcus screamed, but no one heard, because there was no one, just him, and the mirror, and the fog. And then his eyes opened, in a bed, clean sheets, a ceiling fan turning, voices murmuring outside the door. He sat up. He was in a hospital again, but different this time, warmer, busier. The calendar on the wall said October 11th. The year was wrong, 2029. For years, he got out of bed, legs weak but working. He walked to the window. No fog, sunlight, birds, traffic. Someone entered the room, a doctor, young, friendly. "Mr. Tate, you're awake. That's incredible. We weren't sure you'd ever come back." "How long?" "4 years, almost to the day. You were found unconscious in a burned-down church basement. No ID, no injuries, just asleep." Marcus said nothing. Over the next week, he was reintroduced to the world. There were interviews, investigators, psychiatrists. They all had theories. Fugue state psychogenic amnesia, rare neurological trauma. They had no answers. Marcus did, but he didn't share them. Instead, he wrote. Every memory, every face, every scream. He wrote it in journals, on napkins, in the margins of library books. He wrote it into graffiti on underpasses and whispered it into voice memos saved in 20-burner phones. And he published it as fiction. Fog Eaters, a horror novel. Critics called it visionary, bone-deep unsettling, mythic dread brought to life. It became a bestseller. They made a show out of it. Everyone said it felt real, because it was. People sent letters, emails, messages through forums. They had seen fog too, heard voices, lost towns. Marcus replied to each one. One day a package arrived. Inside, a child's drawing, stick figures in a church, a girl, a man, a doorway of light, and a signature, EJ. No address, no return name. He smiled, and on foggy nights, when the world seemed too quiet, Marcus would light a candle and stare into the mirror, waiting. Sometimes he'd hear it. 3 knocks, then her voice. Don't forget. He never did, because forgetting was the invitation, and remembering, that was the only thing keeping the world from fading. They called it the still white in Wender's Gulch. Not fog, not mist, the still white. It was a name whispered more often than spoken aloud, like saying it with conviction might summon it sooner. Wender's Gulch was small, forgotten, a blip in the mountains, half drowned by time and overgrown pines. No cell reception, no internet, just satellite dishes that barely held a signal unless you stood perfectly still on your porch and didn't breathe. Henry Laurie moved there to disappear. After 20 years as a firefighter in Detroit, after losing his left ear to a chemical blaze and watching 3 of his closest friends burn alive, he wanted silence. He wanted retreat, the kind you don't return from. He bought the old Chaplin place, 3 acres, a cabin, a shed, and enough distance from the town center to make every trip for gas feel like an expedition. Locals had been polite if cold, the kind of people who still baked pies for funerals but never invited you to dinner. Henry was used to solitude. He preferred it. His days consisted of tending the wood stove, patching the leaky roof, and trying not to think of the smell of singed hair. But that was before the still white came early. They warned him, of course. The woman at the general store, Marnie, had told him last September, "You might want to keep a lantern close. When the still white rolls in, the power don't mean much." He'd chuckled. "You mean a blizzard?" She'd just stared. "Nah," she'd said finally. "It's not weather." He thought she was just being local, folksy. He was wrong. It began on a Tuesday. He remembered because Tuesdays were mail days, and his truck wouldn't start. He'd gone out to jump it with the battery box when he noticed the quiet. No wind. No birdsong. The air didn't move. Then it arrived. A wall of fog from the west, crawling between the trees, not flowing, crawling. Like it had fingers. It wasn't just white. It was dense. Flat. It muted everything. No smell. No bite. Just wrong. Within 5 minutes, it covered the entire treeline. 10 minutes more, it pressed against his windows. Henry watched it from the porch. Something about it unsettled him. Not in a fear of storm kind of way, but in a wrongness of pattern way. Like watching syrup flow uphill. Then movement. Not in the fog. Of the fog. Twisted in one corner, coalescing. A shape began to rise. Not walking. Not climbing. Just forming. Legs too long. No head. Arms that didn't hang, but draped. Henry stepped back, his heart pounding. He grabbed his binoculars and aimed them at the treeline. Nothing there. He lowered them. The shape was closer now. He raised the lenses again. Still nothing. He dropped them completely. The figure was 10 feet from the porch. He slammed the door, heart thundering like it was back in a burning stairwell. No footsteps. No sound. He grabbed the old Remington from behind the coat rack and sat in the dark. The power flickered, then failed. He didn't light a candle. He didn't move. The fog pressed against the glass like it wanted to come in, not drift in. And then it whispered. Just one word. Henry. He knew his name. He had never told a soul his name up here. Not to anyone but the post office. He sat in that chair until dawn. By morning, the fog was gone. The air smelled of pine again. The sky was the color of steel but visible. He ventured outside. No footprints. No moisture. Just dry leaves and silence. He hiked to town. Marnie was sweeping the stoop of the store. She stopped when she saw him. You saw it. It wasn't a question. Henry nodded. She sighed. It came early this year. What the hell is it? No one knows. My granddad said it came after the mine closed. Others say it's always been here. We just learned how to live around it. Why does it whisper? Because it remembers. He blinked. Remembers what? She shook her head. Not what. Who? She handed him a small leather pouch. Inside were 3 thick candles and a box of matches wrapped in wax paper. Next time, she said, don't listen, and don't look at it through glass. That's how it learns your shape. He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't want to know. But that night, as he sat reading by the fireplace, the fog returned. No warning this time, just presence. The flames flickered sideways. The shadows twisted backward. The glass of the window didn't fog over, it blackened. And from behind it, a silhouette pressed close. A hand. Not flat, but 3-dimensional. From the inside, the glass bulged outward. Henry didn't scream. He grabbed the pouch, lit the first candle and held it up. The figure recoiled, sank, melted. The blackness faded. The fog shrank away. The candle flame danced. Pure, golden, unafraid. He didn't sleep. In the morning, the candle had burned to nothing. In its place, a white feather. He began keeping a journal, documenting the fog's movements, its behaviors, the patterns. Always came after sunset. Always began at the western slope. Never touched his cabin while a flame burned. He set up trail cameras. None worked. Even the ones powered by solar and mounted 10 feet up. Memory cards came back blank. Not corrupted, blank. As if nothing had ever been recorded. But one night, the fog didn't retreat at dawn. It stayed. For 3 days. The sun never rose. The sky never changed. Henry rationed food. Marked the hours by burning candles one by one. On the 4th day, the whispering returned. Not one voice. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Some he recognized. Old friends. His captain's voice. A girl from high school who died in a fire. But most were strangers. They didn't beg. They invited. Come see, they said. Come remember. On the 6th day, The candle flickered blue, then green, then went out. The fog was inside. Not mist, not steam. Fog. Flowing along the floorboards like a living thing. Climbed the furniture. Wrapped the banister. Coated the ceiling. It made no sound. But it hummed. And then he saw them. Figures. One in the hallway. One by the fireplace. One outside the window but looking inward from a place that wasn't the yard. They all looked like him. Slight differences, one missing a hand. One burned down the side. One smiling. All wrong. All watching. He stumbled backward into the kitchen, grabbed a match, struck it, and the figures vanished like frost in sunlight. The fog retreated, slowly. When the match burned out, he lit another. Then another. All night, he fed the fire 1 inch of wood at a time. When dawn finally came, the world outside had changed. His cabin was no longer alone. 10 more stood where there had been nothing but brush. Identical. His cabin. Repeating endlessly. Each with fog rolling out the chimney. Each with a version of himself staring blankly out the window. Only one raised a hand. And waved. Henry stumbled back from the window. His shoulder struck the counter, and he barely registered the pain. The sight outside was still imprinted across his eyes. The cabin. Cabins. 10 of them. 15. 20. Clones of his own home, stretching out in every direction like a hall of mirrors folded over the woods. And inside each, himself. Some figures paced. Some stood still. One lay motionless, slumped in a chair. Another stared directly at him, eyes gleaming like frostbitten glass, lips curled into a smile that didn't match the muscles it took to make it. He blinked, and they blinked back, not all at once, each at different times as if they were thinking independently. Henry stepped away from the window. His feet refused to steady, like the ground beneath his floorboards had subtly shifted. He turned to grab his coat. His plan was still in motion, right? Go to Marnie. Go to town. Get help. Get someone, anyone, to see what he was seeing. But then the knock came. Soft. 3 taps on the back door. He turned, and before his hand reached the knob, something cold passed through him. Not wind, not breath. Memory. A flicker. He was 5 years old again, standing barefoot on his grandmother's porch, watching fog roll in from a distant lake. He'd felt it before, this feeling, this weight, but he hadn't remembered it until now. The knock came again, then a voice. His Henry. It was unmistakable, not an imitation, not mimicry. It was his voice, down to the gravel-laced tone, the subtle rasp that came after he inhaled too much smoke fighting the Baymont fire in 3. I need to come in. It's not safe out here. He said nothing. I know what you're thinking, the voice continued, that you shouldn't open the door, that I'm not real. But I am, Henry. I am. Henry backed toward the kitchen, heart hammering. Another knock. Firmer. You won't survive this alone. You never have. Think about why you came here. Think about what followed you. That wasn't fire, Henry. That was us. He reached the drawer under the sink. The candles were gone. He checked the box by the stove. Also gone. He froze. Looking for these? The voice was inside now. Closer. Then a slow creak, floorboards. Footsteps. Inside. But he hadn't opened the door. He moved slowly toward the hall. And then he saw it. Himself. Standing at the end of the hallway. Not mirrored. Not mimicked. Duplicated. Same scars. Same beard. Same burnt ear. Only his eyes were wrong, milky, pale blue, empty, as if they were staring through time, not space. You never left, Henry, it said. I did, Henry whispered. No, you tried. But your mind, your shape, was already theirs. The doppelganger stepped forward. Shadows swirled behind it, pulling at the walls like fabric in wind. Let me in, it said again. Henry turned and ran. Out the front door into the blinding fog. The cold hit like a slap, immediate and dense. The air was heavy, but breathable, like a tomb sealed too long. The forest was gone. Just cabins now. Endless cabins. Each one with a version of him, staring, pacing, waiting. He stumbled toward the nearest tree line. No compass. No trail. Just instinct and terror. After what felt like an hour, could have been 10 minutes, could have been days, he found something new. A hole. Circular. Clean. Dug into the center of a clearing. Fog did not enter it. Around its rim were objects. Photos. Hundreds of them. All his face. Different times. Ages. Haircuts. Clothes. Expressions. Snapshots of a life he only partially remembered. One photo showed him at a wedding. He never married. Another, him in uniform, shaking hands with the mayor of Baltimore. He never left Detroit. Each photo curled slightly at the edges, as if scorched. Then a whisper behind him. Pick one. He turned. No one. But the whisper came again. Pick the one you like best. That's the version we'll let live. The air cracked like static. He backed away. I'm real, he said. You're a version, the whisper said. But are you the first? He couldn't answer, because he didn't know. Not anymore. The fog began to churn around him, violent, swirling like water circling a drain. He ran again, no longer sure if it mattered where. Eventually, the fog thinned. The ground changed beneath him. Pebbles gave way to pavement. His boots hit concrete. A road, and their dim headlights. He ran toward them, waving. The car braked. Marnie stepped out, her face pale, confused. Henry. He dropped to his knees. Help me. What happened to your eyes? She asked. He frowned. What do you mean? She stepped back. They're not yours. He looked in the side mirror of her truck. His eyes were pale, milky, wrong. He screamed, but it wasn't his voice. The scream rattled Marnie backward. She stumbled into the open door of her truck, hand fumbling for something, anything, beneath the seat. Henry's scream had pitch shifted midway through, from human panic into something hollow, as if the air was leaking out of the world through his throat. He clutched his face now, hands trembling, breath hitching in uneven gasps. What's happening to me? He rasped. But Marnie didn't answer. She was staring at his shadow. It didn't match him. Not anymore. It twitched independently, lagged half a second behind his movements. When he turned, it delayed, and when he froze, it writhed, like a puppet string snapped from above. Back up, she whispered. Just back away. I need help. Maybe. But I don't know if it's you who's asking. He didn't understand. He remembered his name, his life, his scars, the heat of the fire that ruined his crew. He remembered how his captain screamed when the roof collapsed. The smell of wet ash, the distant ring in his ear that never stopped. That was real, wasn't it? I'm me, he said. But even as he spoke, he heard the doubt. Behind his voice, within it, something echoed, something mimicked. Marnie reached into the truck and pulled out a mason jar filled with dark gray powder. She popped the lid and threw a handful into the air between them. The ash shimmered, then bent, away from him, like wind moving around a flame, or like gravity avoiding a wrong shape. Her eyes narrowed. You didn't leave the fog. I did. No. You think you did. She pulled a lighter from her coat and lit another jar. This one held a coiled wick dipped in wax and salt. As it burned, the fog retreated another inch from the truck's perimeter. Henry felt it then. Pressure. A weight beneath his skin, like being submerged in invisible mud. What is this? He asked, his voice hoarse. The still white doesn't kill you outright, she said. It takes you, copies you, overwrites you, and sometimes it lets the copies believe they made it out. She threw more ash. Again it avoided him. You're not Henry Laurie, she whispered. You're one of them. No, he said, shaking his head. I remember you. The store, the fog, the candles, the still white. I remember. And so do they, she said softly. Henry backed away, and the shadow behind him smiled. Not his face, just the shadow. Marnie reached into her glove box and pulled out a long black cylinder, a flare wrapped in sigils etched with silver ink. She struck it against the edge of her truck's bumper, and the flare burst into life. The light wasn't fire orange. It was white, painfully white, and as it flared, Henry screamed again. Only this time it didn't stop. His body contorted, not twisted, but unraveled. His limbs stretched. His mouth widened into a thin slit that spread across his cheekbones. And his eyes, those milky orbs, imploded like glass crushed inward. Then the fog came again. From the woods. Fast. In a rolling tide. But it did not cross the light. Marnie stepped back into the flare's radius, and watched as Henry's figure collapsed into vapor. Not smoke. Not blood. Fog. The kind that left no trace. Only the sound of something inhaling. When the last whisper faded, and the flare dimmed, she sat behind the wheel. Her hands were shaking. She drove straight back to town and locked herself in the cellar of the old church. And she cried. Not for Henry, but for the real Henry, wherever he was now. Because she knew this. Once the still white took you completely, you didn't come back. But sometimes the pieces tried. For days passed. The fog did not return. Marnie stayed mostly inside, fielding quiet questions from the few who had also seen something that night. The strange lights near the treeline, the sound like distant thunder, the sudden failure of the radio tower for 30 full minutes. No one asked about Henry. No one dared. But the truth was, Henry wasn't gone. Not entirely. He woke up on the 6th day in a cabin that wasn't his. Identical but different. The wood grain on the floor twisted counterclockwise. The kitchen had no drawers. The windows were bricked over from the outside. And yet, his face stared back from the mirror. He was whole. No milky eyes. No twisted limbs. He remembered the fog. The copies. The collapse. He remembered dying. But he wasn't dead. He was awake. And he wasn't alone. Outside his cabin, the forest moved with a rhythm. The trees swayed to a soundless pulse. The fog glided through the underbrush like low tide over bone. And in the distance, other cabins. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Each identical. Each occupied. Each with a figure behind the window. Some looked like him. Others didn't. One cabin had a child pressing her face to the glass. Another had a man in a suit suspended midair. Another had no one. But the lights inside flickered in perfect rhythm with his own heartbeat. Henry stepped outside. The fog did not touch him. Parted. Inviting him deeper. He followed it. Not out of trust, but out of inevitability. The path wound past broken signs. Names he didn't recognize. Rindle Hollow, Esther's Gate, Briartide. Each burned into the bark of blackened trees. He reached the center. Clearing. And in the center a single door. Freestanding. Tall. Black. No handle. Just a symbol. 3 waves. Interlocked. Beneath it, carved into stone. This way to the original. He hesitated. Then opened it. Light again. White. Purer than fire. Colder than space. And then, he was standing before himself. But older. Wrinkled. Eyes wet with fog. Welcome, the older Henry said. Where am I? The center. Of what? Of us. Behind them, hundreds of doors. Some open. Some sealed. Each marked with different names. Each echoing with whispers. What is this place? The older Henry smiled sadly. The library of the forgotten. And from the mist behind the door, a girl's voice. Choose who you were, or who you want to become. The girl's voice echoed around Henry like wind in a tunnel. Constant, soft, yet impossible to place. It didn't seem to come from behind the door anymore, or from the mist at its edges, but from inside his thoughts, like someone whispering through the threads of memory rather than air. Choose who you were, or who you want to become. The older Henry smiled without mirth. His posture was dignified, but there was weight behind his eyes, immense, cosmic weariness. Henry stepped forward cautiously, glancing over his shoulder. The forest, if that's what it still was, had changed again. The trees now had doors instead of knots. Each trunk bore a doorknob, a small plaque with names in languages Henry couldn't read, and subtle mist leaking out at the seams. "Where am I, really?" Henry asked. "What is this place?" The inversion, the older version of himself said. "The place behind the mirror. The memory that wakes before you do." Henry shook his head. "That's nonsense. That's poetry. I need facts." "I gave them to you," the older self said. "You just haven't learned to speak them yet." A door creaked open nearby. Not the black one in front of him, but one embedded in a tree just 10 paces away. Light spilled out, but not warm or cool. Not golden or blue. It was the color of regret. And from within, Henry heard screams. Not tortured, not fearful. Dying screams. His screams. He stepped backward. "Don't go in there," said the elder Henry. "That one's already been lived." "What's in it?" "The night of the Beaumont fire. The one you fled from. The one you told yourself you couldn't prevent." "I tried to save them. You tried to run." Henry spun. "That's a lie. Maybe, maybe not. That's the trouble with fog," the old man said, tapping his own temple. "It doesn't just take what's real. It takes what you're unsure about. It consumes doubt." Henry moved back toward the central black door. "The original," he muttered aloud. The elder nodded. "That was the first place they opened. The first town that vanished. Willett Point? Esther's Gate? No. Before all of those. The door doesn't open to a location. It opens to a condition. Condition. A state of forgetting so complete it becomes a kind of undeath. Folded place. A hollow carved out of memory." Henry looked back down the path from where he'd come. All the identical cabins were gone. Now there were only doors. Door after door after door. The elder Henry's hand rested on his shoulder. "You're not alone here. But no one can come with you." "I didn't ask for this," Henry whispered. "No one ever does." Henry reached for the door. The black surface was cold. Not ice cold, but negative. A cold that felt like silence made physical. Like frost that had grown inward through his fingertips. It opened. This time the light didn't consume him. It unfolded him. He didn't feel his body move. He felt himself peeled away from it, like a book's spine coming apart from its pages. And when it was done, he was in his fire gear again. Helmet, jacket, boots slick with water, radio strapped to his shoulder. The heat was real. The sound of sirens fading into the distance. A roar of flame like an avalanche of thunder. Smoke filled his lungs. Choking. Blinding. The Beaumont building burned. And someone was still inside. "Henry, do you copy? Evac. Now." His captain's voice over the radio. But another voice closer. A child. Screaming. He was back. Back in the moment. But this time he remembered. He'd run. Not out of fear. Out of obedience. He followed orders. Evacuated. Let protocol dictate his hands while his heart fractured in protest. And that child had died. Trapped behind the storage aisle. This time, though, he stayed. He turned away from the fire exit and ran toward the screaming. The smoke thickened. Plastic blistered. Steel support cracked. But Henry pushed through. He found the child. A girl. 6. Curled behind a pallet of sealed crates. He grabbed her, held her to his chest, and sprinted through the blaze. The ceiling collapsed behind him, but he made it out. The world warped again. The burning warehouse collapsed into ash, then into fog, then into nothing. And he stood alone in a black void, the child gone. Before him, a mirror. This one didn't reflect his face. It reflected versions of him. One a firefighter, one a hermit, one a twisted, fog-drenched creature with milky eyes and a grin like a paper cut. And one a door. It looked like a person, moved like a man, but it was a door. "Who are you?" Henry asked. and the shape spoke in his voice, but backwards. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Which of us deserves to be remembered? That was the question. He raised his hand. I do, he said. The shape stepped back, and a blade appeared in Henry's hand. Simple, cold, sharp. He plunged it into the mirror, and it shattered. The fog screamed, a sound like glass grinding against teeth. And then he woke up, on the floor of his cabin. The real one. Outside birds sang. No fog, no duplicates, no whispering. He crawled to the window. One cabin, just one. And his reflection in the glass blinked in perfect time. His eyes green, real. He sat for hours waiting. The fog didn't return that day, or the next. He drove into town. Marnie saw him and froze, hands trembling. But this time she smiled. You came back. I remembered who I was. She poured coffee, hands still shaking. You know it's not over. I know. He looked outside. The wind blew. Not fog, just leaves. But maybe it's not about winning, Henry said. Maybe it's about holding on. Holding them off. For how long? As long as it takes. That night, back in his cabin, Henry took a piece of pine wood and carved into it by hand. I am still me. He nailed it above his bed, lit a candle, and waited. The candle burned low. Henry sat beneath the carved sign. I am still me. Its rough edges illuminated in flickering orange light. Outside, the wind rose through the pines like a breath drawn long and slow. And then, just past midnight, the fog returned. But not like before. This time, it didn't crash in like a wave or creep like fingers. It stood. It hovered on the tree line, just beyond the fence. Dense, silent, watching. Henry didn't move. He didn't light a second candle. He let the first one dwindle and watched the line where fog met air. And for the first time, the fog didn't advance. He waited until morning. By dawn, it was gone. But it left a gift. At his doorstep, wrapped in oiled cloth, a single black feather. It shimmered with moisture, but not from dew. It smelled like pages torn from forgotten books, like burnt memories. He touched it, and remembered 1,000 lives that weren't his. A woman in red, running through a field of glass. A man made of clocks, each tick echoing across a city without time. A child with no face, whispering to the wind. All versions, all paths he could have walked. But he hadn't. He chose this one, and the fog respected that. For now, Henry began to keep records. Real ones. Carved tablets, stone engravings, ink burned into treated bark. Because he knew what the fog fed on. Erasures. The first towns it devoured had no archives. No books. No maps. Only stories. Spoken. Fragile. Vulnerable. And when the last person who remembered them died, the towns died too. No remains. No ruins. Just open fields and forests slightly too quiet. But Henry was stubborn. He sent out letters. Descriptions. Coordinates. Reports. He joined online conspiracy forums under fake names and fed them breadcrumbs. Most laughed. A few listened. One man, user Arcadia93, sent him a private message. I saw the still white in 2017, near Cedar Hollow. It tried to take my brother. He didn't make it. I still remember him. Every day. Is that enough? Henry replied. That's the only thing that is. They formed a network. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Each person a node of memory, a flickering candle. Henry dubbed them the cartographers. Their job wasn't to defeat the fog, just to mark its edges. Because once something has borders, it can be fought. Not destroyed, fought. The years passed. Henry aged. Not dramatically, not faster than normal. But every time the fog came, he lost something. A memory, a song, the shape of a friend's face. It wasn't overt. It was slow, gentle even, like a tide quietly dragging pebbles from a shore. He kept carving signs, and when he felt one fading, he wrote it down again. until the words were so familiar, they lived deeper than forgetting. Then came the knock. He hadn't heard one in years. But there it was. 3 soft taps. He stood from his chair and opened the door without fear. The fog stood beyond, and in its center a girl, young, barefoot, eyes like split marble, gray and green and full of storm. "You called me," she said. "I did. You remember me?" "I never stopped." She stepped inside. Her feet left no mark. The fog did not follow her. She brought it, but it obeyed. "Eva," he said. She tilted her head. "That's one of my names. You changed." "So did you." He gestured to the chair across from his. She sat. The candle burned lower. "Why now?" he asked. "Because the first place is fading. The door is closing. The original, the one you opened, has started to collapse." "Why?" "Too much remembering. Too many flames." Henry smiled. "I told you that you were a lantern. I remember." They sat in silence. Then she placed a bundle on the table. Another feather. This one white. "I've been collecting," she said. "Every time someone survives. Every time someone pushes back. They leave something behind." He opened the bundle. Inside were feathers, carvings, pieces of cloth with symbols burned into them. "This is your map," Eva said. "And what am I mapping?" "The boundary." "The edge of the fog?" "No, the edge of them." He didn't need to ask who she meant. "They're losing, aren't they?" he asked quietly. "They're learning fear." Henry stood and opened the window. The fog still lingered, but it didn't enter. It hung like a curtain drawn over a stage. "I'm getting tired," he said. "That's okay. I don't want to forget." "Then you won't." She stood, and for the first time in years, she touched his hand. Cold, solid, real. "We've built something," she said. "A lattice of memory, a resistance of names. And soon, there'll be too many to take, too many to erase." Henry looked at her. "You're not a girl anymore." "No," she said. "And neither are you just a man." Outside, the fog whispered, not with words, but with resignation. Then wind, not their breath, real wind. The trees moved, the leaves rustled, and the still white backed away. It didn't vanish, but it retreated. And for the first time in a long time, stars appeared in the sky. Eva vanished again, this time not into mist, just into the world. And Henry sat by his candle, carving one more name into the wood, Elmbrook, just to make sure it stayed. It began with a traffic jam, not a dramatic one, not a pileup, just a slow, creeping stall of motion on the gray hollow viaduct, a long serpentine bridge that connected 2 sleepy mountain towns, Castor's Gate and Linmere, the kind of route people used to avoid the highway, where the lanes narrowed and the cliff edge sloped steeply down into fog-laced trees. Jason Mintz sat behind the wheel of his cargo van, chewing his thumb and glancing repeatedly at the clock on the dash. 10:42 p.m., too late for traffic, too early for morning. He had just finished his final drop-off, 10 crates of sealed electronics for a rural distributor, and was heading home to Linmere with a half-drained thermos and a box of egg rolls that had already gone cold. Up ahead, red tail lights glowed in the mist like signal flares. He figured it was construction. But then the fog thickened. That wasn't unusual for the hollow. The bridge was known for sudden pockets of dense moisture. Drivers learned to lean on the low beams, keep steady, and never stop unless the road physically forced them to. But this time everyone stopped. Not slowly. Suddenly. Jason braked hard to avoid hitting the SUV in front of him. Tires squealed. His phone flew from the center console to the passenger footwell. He exhaled through his teeth. "Great," he muttered, throwing the van into park. The fog shifted. Not up, not across, inward. It crept down the bridge from both directions, like curtains closing on a stage. He turned on his hazard lights. Nothing moved. He honked once. A sharp, panicked sound in the otherwise perfect silence. No answer. Then someone got out of their car. A woman, 3 vehicles ahead, emerged slowly, like she wasn't sure where she was. Her shoulders hunched forward. She kept glancing left and right, as if she were walking a tightrope above something dangerous. Jason rolled down his window to call out, "Hey, everything all right up there?" She didn't respond. She turned toward the side of the bridge, toward the railing, and stared into the fog like it was a painting only she could see. Jason unbuckled and opened the door. The cold was immediate. Moist air swept into the cab of the van, chilling his skin through his jacket. He stepped out. Around him, people exited their cars one by one. Nobody talked. No one used phones. It was like an unseen conductor had silently given the cue to leave. Jason walked toward the woman. "Hey, ma'am, are you okay?" She turned to face him. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth opened, not to speak, to breathe. Jason froze. Her breath fogged the air in front of her, but the fog didn't dissipate. It lingered, hovered, hung between them like a thin veil, floating an inch from her lips, unmoving. Then it reached for him. A tendril of white uncoiled from her mouth, delicate as cotton, heavy as guilt. Jason staggered back, and just like that, she collapsed. He rushed forward, caught her before she hit the pavement. She was breathing shallow and fast. Her eyes rolled behind her lids. Her pulse trembled under his fingers like a dying moth. Behind him, someone screamed. He turned. A man stood on the roof of a hatchback, arms spread. "Do you hear it?" he bellowed. "It's in the fog." Another voice shouted from further down. "My brother's gone. He was just here." Jason laid the woman down gently and sprinted back to his van. The fog was so thick now, the rear lights of the SUV in front were barely visible. He climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. His phone buzzed once. A text from a number he didn't recognize. "Don't open your eyes." That's all it said. Jason's skin prickled. He tried to text back. No signal. Tried to call. No ring. Just silence. Then a knock. At his window. He turned slowly. Nothing there. He rolled the window down an inch. Still nothing. Just the sound of breathing. Not his own. Heavy. Animal. He reached for the flashlight in his glove box, flicked it on, and shone it out the window. It lit only mist, but in the corner of his beam, movement. A hand. Slender. Gray. Not attached to a body. Pulled back into the fog like a spider retreating into silk. Jason backed the flashlight away, breathing faster. The van's mirrors fogged. Not from inside. From outside. Shapes passed behind them. Tall. Thin. Wrong. They didn't move like people. They floated. Tilted. Rotated unnaturally. Jason climbed into the back of the van and shut the partition door behind him. The rear was loaded with packing blankets, crate straps, and a toolbox. He grabbed the crowbar from the floor. The knock came again. Not on the window this time. On the roof. He held his breath. A second knock. Closer to the center. Then a slow creak. As if weight was shifting above him. The fog was inside now. He could feel it. Not see it, but feel it. Like his bones had been submerged in cold air. He pressed his back to the wall, crowbar raised. Then the floor shifted. The entire van tilted. Like something had grabbed it and was dragging it backward. Jason screamed. The world blurred. The windows frosted. Light vanished. The door burst open behind him. He hadn't touched it. And a voice called from inside the fog. "Jason Mintz, you've been chosen." The voice was close. Too close. Jason's heart pounded in his ears as the cold air pressed into the van's interior like a lung exhaling in reverse. He gripped the crowbar tighter. The voice had used his full name. That wasn't the kind of thing you imagined. That was the kind of thing that knew. "Jason Mintz, you've been chosen." He crawled forward, toward the front of the van. The fog was so thick now that even the dashboard wasn't visible. It wasn't like mist. It didn't swirl or part. Just hung, unmoving, dead weight in the air. He felt along the floor until his hand brushed cold steel, the partition door. He reached up and fumbled for the latch, pushed it open just enough to squeeze through, and slammed it shut behind him. The driver's seat was cold. Unfamiliar. Had it always felt like this? Was he even in his own van anymore? He wiped the condensation from the inside of the windshield, but the outside was covered in something denser than fog now. Frost? No, not frost. Veins. Thin, thread-like patterns etched across the glass, pulsing faintly. They throbbed like they were alive. Jason reached for the ignition, turned the key, and nothing. Not a click. Not a groan. Just silence. And then movement. Not outside. Inside. From the passenger seat. He turned, already knowing what he'd see. A figure sat there. Long limbs. Bent posture. Gray skin like wet clay. Its head was turned fully toward him, though it had no eyes. Where its mouth should have been, there was only a slit, horizontal, sealed by thin, twitching tendrils. Jason couldn't scream. He couldn't even breathe. The creature reached up slowly, its fingers too long to belong to anything human. Pressed its palm against the passenger window. From the center of its hand, fog bled outward, seeping across the glass in branching fractals. Then it spoke, but not with its mouth. The voice came from inside Jason's skull. You are in between. The world shifted. Jason blinked, and the van was gone. The bridge, gone. The cars, gone. He stood now on a flat plane of stone, stretching endlessly in all directions. The sky above a roiling gray void shot through with dim veins of blue lightning. He was barefoot, still clutching the crowbar. Alone. Until he wasn't. They came from the fog like memories returning from trauma. Half-formed, distorted, too vivid. Tall shapes, some with faces, some without, all watching, and among them himself, Jason. Not duplicates, moments, versions of him frozen in time. One, Jason at 12 holding his dying dog. One, Jason at 17, fists bruised from hitting his father. One, Jason at 26, crying in a stairwell after screwing up his first delivery job and being screamed at by his boss. They circled him, each one whispering the same phrase in sync. You are the memory we choose. Then the lightning cracked, and he was back in the van. Breath caught in his throat. But he wasn't alone. Outside, the bridge was gone. In its place, a long corridor of fog flanked by street lamps that flickered with colorless flame. Each lamp pulsed in rhythm, breathing with the fog. He opened the door, stepped out. The moment his foot hit the ground, he knew. This wasn't a place. It was a decision. He walked forward. The lights stretched endlessly, growing taller, the air thinning with each step. Far behind, he heard the faint scream of another traveler. Someone else caught in the fog. He didn't turn back. Couldn't. Wouldn't. Not now. After what felt like hours, the path ended. A platform rose from the fog, circular and smooth, made of stone that hummed beneath his feet. At its center, a mirror. His reflection blinked. He didn't. The mirror image stepped forward and smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, but knowingly. Jason asked, "What is this place?" The reflection answered without speaking. Images, memories, a flood of them. The woman in the car already gone. The man who screamed on the hatchback, his body taken by the fog. The cars, dozens of them, now rusted and swallowed by vines. And his own van, buried in sediment like it had sat for decades. None of this had just happened. It had always been happening. Time didn't pass here. Folded. The fog was not a weather pattern. It was a function, a system, a judge, a curator of timelines. And Jason had entered without permission. The reflection raised its hand, held out something, a small cube, black, silent, perfectly smooth. Jason reached for it and felt everything, every choice, every moment, Every time he could have done something different and didn't, he dropped to his knees, eyes burning. Then the fog whispered again. Choose. He looked up. 2 paths. To the left, a door. Wooden, cracked, warm. To the right, a ladder. Leading up into nothing. He knew what they meant. The door was return. Back to a life where none of this happened. Where he would forget. Where his mind would stitch over the trauma like scar tissue. The ladder was truth. Endless. Unforgiving. A place where nothing was ever forgotten. He stood, walked to the ladder, and climbed. The rungs were cold. Not metallic, but stone. Textured like bone worn smooth by centuries of wind. Each one pulsed faintly beneath Jason's grip, as though alive. The air grew thinner as he climbed, but not with altitude, with removal. As if with every step, something was being peeled from him. His doubt, his time, his name. Halfway up he stopped, not from fatigue, but from silence. The kind that makes your heart beat louder just to prove it still exists. The fog below had vanished completely. Above him, blackness, flat and still. It didn't move like sky or ceiling. It simply was. He kept climbing. Hours passed, or none. The ladder ended. Not at a ledge or platform. It just stopped. Above him, a doorway, hanging in the dark like a mouth waiting to be fed. He reached upward, touched the frame. It opened inward, and Jason fell. Not downward, inward. He fell into himself. He hit the ground hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. But it was air. He coughed and gasped, fingers clutching at damp earth. He was in a field. A meadow, actually. Waves of yellow grass shimmered in moonlight, their tops flicking gently in the breeze. It was beautiful, almost ordinary, except it wasn't, because the stars above him didn't match any sky he knew. They pulsed in spirals, changed color, moved in rhythm, and the moon, it had a face, not human, something older. It blinked once, and Jason shivered violently. Behind him, the doorway closed. There was no ladder anymore, no path, just the field and the wind and the feeling that something very old was watching. He stood slowly. His hands no longer shook. His breath came easier. And then he heard voices, not around him, inside him. I remember this place, he said aloud, startling himself. Of course he did. He'd never been here, but he remembered. The lullaby his mother used to hum. Soft fog walks where fire sleeps. The stories his grandfather used to tell of the graying time, when people disappeared for years and came back with different faces. It was real. All of it. He was in the place where stories sleep, where half-remembered truths go to decay. He walked. The grass parted before him. Path formed, not cut, but remembered. At the edge of the field stood a house. White. 2 stories. Front porch with a swing. Jason stopped in his tracks. It was his childhood home. But that house had burned down in '99. This wasn't a replica. This was the house. He stepped onto the porch. The boards didn't creak. The air smelled like his mother's garden, marigolds, and rain. He touched the door, and it opened on its own. Inside, light glowed from oil lamps. His father's coat hung on the wall. His mother's slippers waited by the couch. In the kitchen, a meal sat uneaten. Grilled cheese, tomato soup. Steam rose from the bowl. He walked through the house in a daze. Every detail was exact. The scratch on the hallway baseboard from where his bike fell. The painting of a ship his uncle painted and no one liked. The dent in the fridge door from a tantrum he threw in 4th grade. It was perfect, and entirely wrong. He found the dining room mirror, looked into it. His reflection didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't smile. Then it moved. Not him, just the reflection. It stepped away from the mirror and walked toward him. Jason backed up. The mirror shattered, and the creature emerged. It wasn't monstrous. It wasn't grotesque. It was him, but emptied. Eyes gray, skin pale, mouth sealed. It reached for him. Jason screamed. and the house blinked out of existence. He stood again in the blackness. No sky, no ground, only stars shifting like thoughts. And then a voice, not from within, not from around, but from before. Jason Mintz, you've walked the ladder. You've chosen the long way. And now, light spilled from above. You must remember what others forget. A book floated down, leather-bound, huge, chained shut. A key appeared in his hand. He opened it. Inside, names. Thousands. Each one a person lost in the fog. Some with dates. Some with stories. And then, on the last page, Jason Mintz witness. Under it, blank space. Room for more. What am I? He whispered. A figure emerged. The girl. The one from Elmbrook. Eva. You're the archive now, she said. The fog can't touch what's been written. He clutched the book. Tears spilled down his face. And if I forget? You won't, she said. You did, he said. She nodded. And I came back. She pressed a hand to his forehead. You'll know what to do. The blackness cracked. Light exploded. And Jason woke. In his van. Engine off. Phone in his lap. 10:43 p.m. Tap at the window. The woman. Still dazed. But this time he knew what she would say. And this time he would listen. Jason opened the door slowly, stepping down into the cold night. The woman stood in the same place. Mid-lane, wide-eyed, arms trembling. But now he saw her differently. She wasn't just a bystander. She was caught. Held in the edges of the fog the way memories sit on the tongue before you can speak them. Hey, he said gently. Her eyes locked onto his, but they didn't focus. Don't listen to it, he whispered. Not yet. It doesn't want you. It wants your shape. She blinked rapidly, one hand twitching toward her ear like she was trying to block out a sound no one else could hear. Jason reached forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. It was like touching static. A pulse traveled up his arm. Cold, deep, and curious. The fog responded. It hissed. Not angrily, not violently, but like a disappointed parent told no for the first time. Jason stepped between the woman and the fog. The shape within the mist coiled tighter, but didn't advance. It knew him. Now it remembered him. Because he remembered it. He turned to the woman again. Do you know your name? She blinked. Maya. Good. Say it again. Maya. Don't forget it. Not even for a second. He guided her back to the car she'd come from. The driver's side was empty. The door hung open, fog curling along the seat. Jason placed his hand on the door and spoke aloud. She's not yours. The fog receded. Only a little, but enough. He helped Maya into the seat and closed the door gently. The instant it latched, the car shifted, from still and dead to vibrant again. The dome light flickered. The dashboard lit. Jason stepped back. Other cars reappeared in the mist, figures sitting frozen within them. Some slumped, some upright, some missing entirely. The bridge was back, but now he could see it all. Not just the road, the two layers. The surface world, the one the others saw, the one they drove on, lived on, forgot on. And the second one, the archive, where the fog was a gate. Not a predator, not just a test, but a record keeper. Jason wasn't a passenger anymore. He was part of the bridge. He moved down the road. People stirred in their vehicles as he passed. Some stared at him blankly. Others blinked and clutched their heads like waking from a dream. One boy, barely 16, rolled down his window and shouted, "Did I just see someone climb out of the sky?" Jason only smiled. Behind him, the fog shifted. Not toward the people. Toward him. It followed like a tide pulled by a new moon. Not aggressively. Respectfully. At the far end of the viaduct, the police had finally arrived. Red and blue lights cut jagged shapes in the fog, useless but insistent. Two officers were trying to walk up the bridge with flashlights. Jason met them halfway. "Sir," one said, "are you injured?" What the hell happened up here? Jason looked at them for a long moment. Nothing, he said. Just fog. It passed. They scanned his face. Then the name badge on his shirt. Then the journal in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. But it was his. The book of names. The archive. The younger officer peered past him. Did someone fall asleep at the wheel or something? Half the cars look like they've been idling for hours. Jason didn't answer. Instead, he turned the journal toward them. The younger cop recoiled slightly. Are those my parents' names? They were. Jason didn't need to write anymore. The book did it for him. It recorded those on the edge. The ones fading. The ones at risk. The names moved as he watched. New ones appearing in swirling script that wrote itself like mist on glass. Over the following weeks, Jason returned to the bridge at night. Sometimes to drive it. Sometimes just to walk. Sometimes to stand. Every time the fog came to him. And every time it obeyed. He stopped 2 disappearances that way. A man about to follow a voice over the railing. A girl who saw her twin sister in the mist and tried to hug her. Jason remembered their names. Held on to them. The fog left them alone. But it learned too. It began disguising its intent. It began speaking more clearly. Crafting full conversations instead of whispers. It adapted. Jason wrote down everything it said. And still, the book never ran out of pages. One night, Jason found a note tucked under the windshield wiper of his van. No envelope. Just 6 words, handwritten in blocky, unsteady ink. The ladder never ends. Keep climbing. He checked the book. No new name that night. Not until 2:44 a.m., when the name Eva appeared again. But this time not in warning. In bold. Below it, guide. He looked up. The fog waited at the far end of the viaduct, still as death. And just barely visible at its center. A figure. A girl. Watching. Jason stepped forward. Each footfall echoed longer than it should have, as though time had stretched across the viaduct. The cars behind him faded into silence. The red and blue lights from the police cruisers flickered out one by one, not like bulbs failing, but like a theater going dark before a final act. The fog curled around the far edge of the bridge like a stage curtain poised to rise. And at its center, she waited. Eva. She hadn't changed. Still the same braid over one shoulder. Same gray-green eyes. Same impossible stillness. Jason approached slowly. He didn't speak. Neither did she. They both understood there was a conversation unfolding. One that used memory instead of language. He held out the book. Eva shook her head gently. It's yours now. But you were the first. I was one of the first. That doesn't make me the last. The fog thickened around them, not in menace but attention. It was listening. Eva stepped closer. They're almost done testing you, she said. You're not the only ladder climber. But you're one of the few who remembered why you started. I didn't want to die, Jason said. That's how everyone begins, she said. But you kept going. A ripple moved through the fog, parted down the middle like a sea opening around them. Behind Eva, the bridge ended. But in place of asphalt, a stairway of glass extended into darkness. Each step shimmered. Some were broken. Some whole, some mended. Eva gestured toward it. This leads back. It leads forward, she said. But the moment you take it, the fog will know what you truly are. What am I? She smiled faintly. The witness, the chronicler, the one who stands between vanishing and remembering. Jason looked back. The bridge, the cars, the silent witnesses sitting in metal husks, unaware how close they'd come. He saw their faces reflected in the mist, names already etched in the book. Can I save them all? He asked. Eva didn't answer. Instead, she stepped aside. Jason placed his foot on the first step. It didn't feel solid, but it held. As he climbed, the fog surged up around the base of the stairway, screaming, but not in rage, in grief. Jason understood it suddenly. The fog wasn't just a predator. It was a graveyard, a whispering monument to things no one wrote down. Towns that no longer had libraries. Children never recorded in census rolls. Entire families erased by silence. It was trying to hold on to something the only way it knew how. By taking, by mimicking, by preserving distorted echoes. Jason reached the top of the stairs. A doorway stood there. Not grand, not mysterious. Just a narrow, wooden door like the one in his parents' old hallway. The kind that creaked every night at 3:00 a.m. when he snuck into the kitchen for milk. On the door, a single word, freshly carved. Stay. He turned the handle. Inside, a study. Warm, quiet, a desk. A window that looked out onto no place he recognized. Only a sea of stars swirling through ink. He stepped in. The door closed behind him without a sound. On the desk, a quill and parchment. The book lay open. Blank again. Ready. Jason sat. Picked up the pen. He began to write. Not what had happened. Not what he had seen. But what must not be forgotten. Names. Faces. Stories. Moments no one else had witnessed. A man whispering a confession into fog and finding forgiveness. A child walking out of the mist clutching a memory of a sister no one believed had existed. A woman who waited for decades at the edge of her porch because she promised her husband she wouldn't forget the path he took. And the fog listened. Curled at the edges of the window like a cat. Content. Not gone, but calm. Years passed. Jason never aged. Not in the study. Outside, people forgot. The world moved on. Technology changed. Maps were redrawn. But on fog-heavy nights, travelers on lonely roads sometimes spotted a house where no house had ever been. A warm light in a window. A man inside writing. And if they looked too long, their name would appear in the book. But only if they were about to be lost. Because Jason had rules. Only the fading could be remembered. Only the ones no one else would carry. And one night, when the fog rose higher than it had in a century, when the stairway turned to ice and the book bled ink on its own, Eva returned. Older now, whole. She stepped inside without knocking. I remember now, she said. Jason looked up, smiled. There's room for more, he said. She sat across from him. Together they wrote. And the fog never swallowed another town again. Because someone finally chose to remember. Fog doesn't erase. It remembers. The places you've forgotten. The names no one speaks. And when it returns, it's not to warn you. It's to take something back. You heard the stories. Now ask yourself. The next time fog rolls in, will it know your name?